Hello and welcome to Simple Life Philosophy. I'm your host, Ed Raby. This is the channel where you follow along on my journey to discovering a simpler philosophy of life that is both easy to understand and execute, that leads me to be more productive and having more peace of mind. And hopefully, by following on that journey, you will also find some of those same things. I want to thank everybody for who's subscribed recently. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Continue to do so. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Any little bit helps out the channel. I'm trying to grow. Um, you know, hit your notification bell, like the video if you like it, share it with your friends. Sharing does a lot, because it allows me to reach people I don't even know I can reach. Okay, but you know those people. So um, anything you do can help. So thank you once again for everybody who helps me out on that. I just really appreciate it. The YouTube algorithm gods can be very fickle, and you guys, anything we do to appease them helps. Today, I'm doing a personal journey post, and I have 3 topics to cover. Try not to stay too long on any one topic. I do these to kind of solidify how I'm feeling. I usually do them on Thursday, but yesterday I was really today's Friday, I was having a real hard time because of one of the subjects I'm going to talk about today. Um, so today, I want to talk about, first of all, my therapy session on Wednesday and some of the progress I've made. I want to document this so that I can help myself. I usually watch these videos again right before my next therapy session, so I want to solidify what goes in my mind. Now, for those of you out there, he has a therapist. Yeah, you should think no more of that than if I told you I went to the doctor. Okay, I went to an MD. Um, you have a nervous system and a brain and a spinal cord that sometimes doesn't work the way it's supposed to, and you need to find ways to cope. And a therapist is the best way to do that, in my opinion. Mine's been gold for me. So, and I'll have to talk about how I found that therapist in a minute for one of my other topics. But so my therapy session was actually a lot more positive this time because it marked me making progress. For instance, because I'm working with the working theory that I am autistic, a lot of things make sense to me a little bit more from and how I handle them, because a lot of that comes from hypersensitivity, and dealing with hypersensitivity as an autistic person is a big deal. Because for me, I have to wear sunglasses when I'm outdoors, and even if it's a cloudy day, I usually have to wear sunglasses. Um, I, hear loud multiple noises, and just confuse me. My sense of taste is usually better than most people. Got to try that out today and suddenly realized that that's actually can be a positive. I always used to think I was allergies that plugged in my nose. Now I think it's not that at all. I think it's hypersensitivity, and I just get a strong nostril full. And touch is always an issue. And what I talked about with my therapist is how I've dealt with that better now. And she asked me some questions about my sleep habits, and I told her, I says, I've pretty much since I was a youth, I've only slept like 5, 6 hours a day. I'm one of those people. She says, well, yeah, that could be autism. It could be something else. And one of the big things that I learned, and I want to solidify it by putting it here, is how my mind works. I don't think people understand my brain very much, because from the moment I wake up till the time I go to bed, my brain is always thinking about something. It does not shut off. I don't have the ability to just veg and do nothing. And the only time I do nothing and don't really feel like I'm thinking is when I'm sleeping, taking a nap. It's why, like in the middle of the afternoon, like before I do a video, I will take a short 15-minute break where I close my eyes and literally nap, because it's the only way I can get my brain to shut off for a minute so I can take a rest and think. It's why I do meditation in the morning, to focus my thoughts, because they're all over the place. Possible ADHD doesn't really matter. All I know is that from my perspective, I move from trying to find something to think about. It's like scatterbrain going all over the place, trying to find that one thing to think about. And then I'll find it, and then my mind stays on that thing forever until I feel like I've exhausted it, and then off we go into the scatterbrain. It's why I have to have routines, it's why I have to have systems, so I get the daily business of stuff done while all that is going on. Okay, so I've learned how to cope with that a little bit better, and I now understand why I like routines and systems, because they help me get the stuff of life done despite all that. So that was progress. I She basically told me, it sounds like I'm taking a little bit more control of my emotions. When I'm feeling sad, I can now dwell on that without feeling like I'm going to be dragged back into that 2 years of depression, things like that. And um, whenever I deal with stuff, I know that I'm making progress when I feel less trapped. Because you're either feeling trapped, you're feeling lonely, or you're feeling depressed. That's my triumvirate of dragons that I deal with. And the feeling of trapped usually comes when I don't want to think about something and I have to. So it was a very good therapy session in the sense that I made good progress in understanding that I'm making progress. I want to get to a point where I can really genuinely consider my vision for my life, because I don't want to do that right now until I get a better handle on how to deal with some of this stuff. So still kind of putting that off. Right now I'm in the place I need to be to make those decisions and do the things I need to do. So that's a positive. Second topic I want to deal with today is the reason I didn't post a video yesterday is I knew that today I was going to have to drive down to the more southern part of Michigan around Grand Rapids and visit my father's grave, and my grandfather, by the way. Although he's not my biological grandfather, he did adopt my father. And do some work on those graves, fix them up a little bit. And me and my mom travel down together to do this every year around Father's Day, as close to Father's Day as we can get. And it's always been a good thing for me. It got a little bit more closure when I realized that I was never going to hear from him again as an atheist. I was never going to see him again. I think for the first time I had some closure as far as his death, because I was always kind of hanging on to him. I'm going to see him again. I got to get to heaven and all that stuff. And today I just went down there, and today I focused on both my dad and my grandfather have a military plaque that tells what branch of service they were in, and the date, life and death, and what their rank was and all that stuff. And my dad was just a Navy seaman, but he never set foot on a ship. He was a driver in Florida for admirals and captains. He drove them around. He chauffeured them around in what constituted back then a 1960s limousine. And that's what he did. And of course, he had to wear his dress whites, and he had his sidearm and things like that. And that's what he did. The big significant thing, though, is that he was down there during the Cuban crisis. So he was in the middle of all that, driving these captains and admirals around, during the Cuban crisis. And it's kind of funny because we go to the grave, in order to get this military marker at the time, we had to say that he was in Vietnam, which he wasn't. It's kind of just before the Vietnam era, so they kind of just tie the Cuban crisis into that, and that's how we got the plaque. So I have to explain that every time I take a picture of it, that he wasn't really in Vietnam, but he was in the Cuban crisis. Kind of stuff that led up to Vietnam, if you will. And then my grandfather, who adopted my father, who I consider more my grandfather than my biological grandfather, he flew B-17s in World War II. And the funny thing about it is I only remember him up to 9 years old, because he died when I was 9. But what I remember about him is being a very strong man. But I do remember a couple of things, and maybe this is my childish mind playing tricks on me or something, but now that I know that I'm autistic, one of the things I do pretty well is remember things. I remember events that have emotional connection pretty well. And I remember one day he was very quiet. He would never talk about the war. I found out later that he had like 2 distinguished flying crosses. He was shot down twice. The pilot that he was flying with, because he was just the co-pilot, got wounded and had to be rotated home. So he took over the slot as pilot, and they brought in a new co-pilot. And suddenly he found himself in command. And I know all this from reading his military records when I was a teenager. I managed to get a hold of them from my grandmother, and then she yelled at me and took them away. But I found them, and I just read through them. And, he got all his missions in. He got shot down twice, Distinguished Flying Cross twice. Very brave man. But I knew him as Grandpa. And great dad. He adopted a bunch of boys that weren't his own because his wife, my grandmother, couldn't have children. And so he adopted some and raised them and took care of them. And it's funny because of the three boys, we don't know what happened to one. As soon as he turned 18, he took off. My other uncle has repeatedly said the only reason he stuck around was because of Grandpa, not Grandma. I won't go into my grandmother. Just a very difficult woman. And my dad absolutely loved my grandfather and taught me to do the same. And I remember when he died, he had gotten in a car accident and he had a heart attack. And I've kind of dealt with that. I guess this fits with therapy because it's like, this is a guy that was a really good man, and I really wanted to get to know him better. And just never got a chance. The one thing I remember was his strong hands. I remember him being very loving and comforting to me. He had fought a war and didn't want me to face that. I remember my dad said that he did not want his grandchildren to ever face a war, okay, like that ever again. And it seems to be the way of all old soldiers. They tend to be that way. Here's a man who, is, in my opinion, is a genuine hero, okay? But he never took credit for that. He never talked about it. He could have regaled us young kids with his war stories. Never did. Based on the records, I know that they crash landed, they belly landed once, and if you've ever seen a B-17 side windows, he jumped out of that. And I think he was wounded. I didn't see any Purple Heart, so I don't think he was wounded, but I think he hurt himself doing that window dive. And it stuck with him. And psychologically, I don't remember much other than he wouldn't talk about the war. And I think the thought of being a bomber pilot and dropping bombs got to him. I think it got to him. And the fact that he went on missions that killed innocent people, And it had to end the war. And so those two men, as I approach Father's Day, I'm going to do a Father's Day video on Sunday, but I've already done one about preparation for Father's Day and what to do with your father. I'll link that above my head. But yeah, two great men that were great fathers taken away from us very early, more early than they should have been. And that leads to my last topic. I had a commenter ask this, and then I was also perusing today. I'm a graduate or a participant in the Clergy Project, and we have a Facebook page. It's private. You have to go through a rigmarole to get to it. But somebody posted, some guy, I don't even want to mention his name because I think he's a jerk, and I don't want to give him credit. But he posted something about how since Pat Robertson's death, he's called the 700 Club 6 times and asked to speak to Pat Robertson. And every time, of course, they have told him, well, he's dead. And finally, about the 5th or 6th time, I said, you've already called about this. Why do you keep calling? We have already told you that he's dead. And the guy says, yeah, but I still like to hear you say it. I'm an atheist. Much like the guy who wrote How to Be a Stoic, Massimo Pelusi, he has a part in his book where he talks about he does not like the angry, pushy atheists, even though he is one himself. And he says the reason I don't like them is they destroy dialogue, and being a Stoic is about dialogue. It's also about not wasting emotional energy. Can you do anything positive about somebody's death? Yeah, you can, but that's not it. And I had to write a comment. I hope it doesn't bite me in the ass because some people might. But as somebody who has been a pastor who came out of that, I am very sensitive to when people attack ministers that die or do something stupid because I realized I was caught up in that myself too. And so Pat Robertson's death for me, and I had a commenter ask what my thoughts are. Here you go. He's dead. And there's no amount of anger or hatred towards him at this point is going to do any good. If anything, we should recognize his humanity, like we should recognize everybody's humanity. And that, I can say, I think he was deceived personally. If I had, let's say I had debated Pat Robertson at some point and we had had a couple of debates and not gotten anywhere. And somebody came up to me and said, hey, the guy you used to debate died. What do you think of that? My response would be, well, I'm sorry to hear about his death. I disagreed with him a lot. I intellectually had problems with his positions, and I think, that he was, very misled. However, at this time, I think it's more important that we understand that he was a human being, capable of error, not infallible, and that he was a father, I believe. He had kids, grandkids, and they're all grieving right now. And I am not going to make an ass out of myself by diminishing the dead. I won't do it. And that's gotten me a couple of ires. I remember when Rush Limbaugh died, I did the same thing. I'm a stoic, okay? I refuse to waste emotional energy like anger and hatred on somebody who's dead. I refuse to do it. It is a waste of time. It is a waste of energy. And it doesn't do anything good. If I, and I had a few people that I looked up to as a minister, if somebody that I looked up to had died, and then an atheist comes along and says, yeah, I'm glad he's dead, do you think that would have drawn me more to listening to the atheist position or pushed me away? I think it would have pushed me away. In fact, I know it did because it did it several times. Atheists that came at me and said I was just stupid and ignorant and fool never got my attention. Okay, Richard Dawkins was a hard sell, okay, for me. But I began to realize that sometimes he was just stating what he believed and people got pissed off at it. Other times his behavior needed some work. Okay, but I owe him because he started the Clergy Project, and without which I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have my therapist, because that's how I got my current therapist, is through the Clergy Project. And it was his donation of money and his brainchild to create the Clergy Project, even though he couldn't be a part of it. I remember when Christopher Hitchens died, and a whole bunch of religious people took to the airwaves and celebrated his death. I bet he believes in hell now. He's roasting there. And you know what I thought? Wow, what a bunch of jerks. But now the shoe's on the other foot and we're acting like a bunch of jerks. We are not going to win this debate by being assholes. We are not going to win it by being offended. We're not going to win it by accusing people and calling people names. Calling people names is ad hominem attack. Get over it. We're going to win this. I don't get me wrong. I have blocked somebody already on this channel who is a believer because they wouldn't answer my questions and they're just going around and around. I don't have the emotional energy for that. Answer my questions and then we can have a discussion. Till then, I just don't really feel that you're here to have a discussion. I think you're just trolling. So I don't need that. Okay. And so I've taken harsh action against believers when I needed to. That said, this is not one of those times. Knowing the right time. Pat Robertson is dead. My personal feelings about him, who he was, are irrelevant. They're just irrelevant. Okay? What does matter is he was a human being. He had a family. He has people grieving over him. Not necessarily because he was a great religious figure, but some of them are grieving because he was somebody special to them. And as much as I thought it was distasteful for believers to celebrate Christopher Hitchens' death, I feel it is equally distasteful for atheists and non-believers to celebrate Pat Robertson's death. It's just juvenile 9-year-old behavior. And my response to this guy's, he posted this, and I put in the comments, I said, yes, because acting like a 9-year-old engaged in crank calls doesn't reinforce the angry, bitter, atheist stereotype at all. Facepalm. Come on, man, be better. You know, Stoicism says the best revenge is not to become like your enemy. You guys just became like the enemy when Christopher Hitchens died. You're acting just like them. How does that make anything better? How does it improve a damn thing? And I'm angry about this, okay? And I think my anger, I'm trying to calm down, because it's this kind of behavior that would have kept me in the faith. And you're literally taking away progress when you do shit like this. And it pisses me off. I'm mad, okay? And I think all of you need to flippin' grow up and be adults and be better than your enemy. Be better than your enemy. If the goal of any discussion, any debate is progress, not victory, okay? You're never going to have victory, but you can make progress in a discussion. And the discussion between the theist and the atheist needs to keep making progress. And when you do crap like this, you diminish progress and you remove progress. And we have to start over and we have to move along the line. Because they remember you being an asshole. They remember you being a jerk. They don't remember my great argument against their position. They remember you're a jerk. Okay? I'm sorry. Pat Robertson was a man. Yeah, maybe I considered him a little deluded. I thought he took advantage of people's faith, but maybe not. Because if he was a sincere believer, in his mind, he's not lying. In his mind, he's sincere. Is that being deceptive when somebody is genuinely sincere? I don't think so. Deception is when you know something is wrong and you still say the opposite. I don't think Pat Robertson, I think he was a genuine, sincere believer in all the stuff he believed. And did he mislead people? Did he make false prophecies? Sure. But I don't feel like I'm going to accomplish anything as a Stoic, as an atheist, as a non-believer by jumping on the bandwagon of celebrating and turning a jig because he's dead. I feel nothing but sympathy for the family. And there's no point in feeling pity for Pat Robertson because he's dead. He isn't even around to know that I'm feeling pity or angry or anything like that. Come on, man. What good does this do? What good does this do? Now, I know the thumbnail has me doing a thumbs up. I was more about the therapy and how I've made progress with my father's death. The thumbs down today is how some people are reacting to Pat Robertson's death that are on my team. Grow up. Be better. Be better than your enemy. Well, I want to thank you for coming by today. This has been Simple Life Philosophy with your host, Ed Raby. I trust that you're all walking closer to the philosophy of life that you want, and that you're getting to be a better person by following after virtue and finding the simple way of life that leads to peace. Let's find ways to lead to peace and not conflict. Thank you once again for stopping by. Make sure you like the video, share it, subscribe to the channel, hit your notification bell, and comment below if you have anything to say. And I'll see you again next time, and you have a great day.